Now we know the 4 things that are going to kill you, and we know pretty much 7 of the things that are likely to make you age. And the trick here that's revolutionary in the idea behind Superhuman is that you can't say, oh, you know what, my car's going to last forever. I'm just going to make sure I change the tires all the time.
So you've got some adventures that you've been on, and I had no idea about the arthritis thing when you were just a teenager.
Oh, man, that was bad.
How?
You know, when I was 14, I was playing soccer, and I played for something like 10 years when I was young, and it hurt all the time. And I went to the doctor finally, and he's like, "You have arthritis." I'm like, I was sort of stunned. I didn't even know what to say, and I went home like, "This is a disease for old people, right?" And this is what you think when you're 14, right? And you think, I'm not old, and I don't want to be old, and you know, it was kind of a weird psychology thing, to be honest. But I had knee braces and all kinds of weird stuff, and it just hurt. It turns out there's a bunch of things that contribute to inflammation like that, but I also hit 300 pounds when I was about 21, 22. I'd had 3 knee surgeries by then, and all kinds of other just strange health problems, nosebleeds, rashes, high blood sugar, just continued weight gain. I'd lose weight, gain weight, allergies, dark circles under my eyes, and stuff. And it turns out I was living in a basement that had toxic mold in it. And toxic mold just poisons you systemically at a cellular level. And one of the things, you get autoimmunity, you get inflammation in your joints, you get like even stretch marks. I have way more stretch marks than I ever should have, any human should have. And it all came about from the environment around me and the environment inside of me. It's all hackable. If I'd have known what I know now, it would have been like a 1-month fix.
That's crazy. And what I kind of picked up from reading your story was, you know, you just kind of accepted it as normal because it was just a part of your everyday life for a while.
It's kind of like being colorblind. People who are colorblind don't know they're colorblind.
Right.
And you'll ask them, and say, "I'm not colorblind." And then you hold up the thing with the red and green and say, "I don't see any difference." And you're like, "Yeah, the rest of us see a difference. Now do you believe you're colorblind?" And you're like, "Oh." So it wasn't until I was somewhere in college and a doctor made me some orthotics that worked. And I'm like, wow, you're supposed to be able to walk across campus without it hurting? Because it always hurt. It was just a standard thing. So I ended up growing up with, by the time I was 26, they said, "Oh, you've got less testosterone than your mom. You've got high risk of stroke and heart attack." That was when I was about 29. Prediabetes, somewhere in that range. And you look at all the things that take you out when you get old. I'm like, oh, and the cognitive function problems I was having as a result of living in places with toxic mold and eating the wrong fats and just not having the biology that I wanted. I'm like, man, this is a preview of what most people get when they're in their 60s, 70s, 80s. And
Unbelievable.
I don't want to go back to that.
When you said testosterone lower than your mom, like first of all, it stopped me in my tracks. And then you put that your mom's was tested.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was
So
not.
it was like not a joke.
I'm not joking. Hers was tested before mine because even back then, you know, this was 20 something years ago. I knew about anti-aging because I'm interested in the future and like what's going to happen. So I'd read a few things. And my parents were getting old, and I said, "You know what, guys, I think you should go see this guy." And I was working on hacking my own health. I didn't recognize that I was as sick as I was, or that I was really as old as I was biologically. So I sent my parents in first. And they saw this guy, and when I went to go see him, he's like, "Well, most of my patients don't look like you. They tend to be old." I'm like, "Well, just do this." And he got all my labs. The first doctor I ever met who used Excel. He said, "Here, I put all your labs on the spreadsheet so we can track them next time." And I'm like, mind blown. No, it's very commonplace, but I was fortunate to find one of the first guys on earth to do that. Yeah. And yeah, he said, "Yeah, Dave, your testosterone's lower than your mom's." And I was just like, oh my God, that's what's going on. It's one of many things going on, but it was amazing what happened. So if I could go from being this obese person with arthritis and all of these problems to 10.1% body fat without a lot of exercise necessary, with a brain that works like crazy well, and younger at 46 than I was at 36, I feel like everyone else has an unfair advantage over me. Oh, and I'm still going to live to 180.
Yeah, I love that too, man. Like just the claim that, you know, that you're really just attaching yourself to, and you say it repeatedly throughout the book, and I'm just like, it's really inspiring because most people don't have the audacity to say something as strong as that. And the thing is also, you're putting things in place to make it more probable, right? And so first, how did you get from there to being even interested in living this long life? How did you go from like, I'm just trying to get well to thinking about longevity?
In order to get well, you sort of have to acknowledge that you're sick. And I had a hard time with that because I'm not sick. Look at me. Like, I've made $6 million. I was 26. Like I lost when I was 28. That was a bit of a mistake. But you know,
Another story.
Well, like my career is going pretty well. Like I feel like I'm checking the boxes. And I didn't acknowledge myself. Like I've got the accelerator all the way to the floor all the time, and I'm slowing down. And I can push harder, but there's no room for it to push any harder. And it got a little bit scary. And I said, all right, I got to really start getting on top of my health. It's going to be the most important thing. Every time I get a sinus infection, every time something happens, like I can't show up at work the way I want to show up. And I was at the company that held Google's first servers. When it was 2 guys in a server, they came in and like, hey, can you handle these for us? Like, yeah, we got that. And so this is during the .com times. The Facebook came in and yeah, we got your servers. Like it was kind of a big deal. And I just was like, I can't bring it some days. I don't know what's going on. So I got to manage my health. But the whole idea, I need to recover. I didn't figure that out till much later in the process. What I did do though is I started seeing doctors, and I write kind of the journey in Superhuman. But I started seeing some different doctors saying, "Hey, can you help me with this one thing that I don't like?" And it wasn't that I'm sick. It's not doing what I want. And what I realized, our bodies know what we want. You woke up in the morning, your joints were stiff, or you had a headache, or you were just foggy or cranky or super hungry. Just like look, I just wanted to show up. Like I wanted to be super, super nice today, or I didn't want muffin top, and I got muffin top, and I don't know why, and it pisses me off because it wasn't there yesterday. Right? This happens all the time. We all know what this is like. So this is the mindset that I had. But a friend said, "Hey, Dave, you should hang out at this anti-aging nonprofit group in the Bay Area. It was called Smart Life Forum." I'm like, that sounds dumb. Was actually my response. How arrogant can you be? And like, what kind of a name is that? And of course, the name life hacking didn't exist, right? Yeah. And we ended up changing the name of that group years later to Silicon Valley Health Institute. But I can tell you that I went to my first meeting and I was 28, 29 or something. Everyone else in the room was 60, 70, 80, 90. Like, but these are my people. Yeah. And afterwards, I remember the very first meeting, this guy, Mike, he was about 85 years old. And we stayed out till 11:30 chatting just after the meeting. And he was saying, I do this. I'm like, oh my God, these guys are taking smart drugs. And Mike, it turns out a couple years later, he started dating a 36-year-old.
Oh my God.
Right. And it was like, he could keep up with her. They were actually in love. And it wasn't sort of a lecherous sort of thing. It was unusual, sure. But the deal is, these are people whose brains work just fine. And people who are saying, I'm like, screw this aging thing. I got this. And these are original Silicon Valley hackers. That group was started by one of the guys who invented Ethernet. And so this has been out there since 1993. And I just said, all right, I got to do this. And I became inspired. I said, if they can do this, and they started in their 60s, I'm starting in like my 20s and 30s. What am I going to be able to do? And then I got to know the experts in the field. And every month we bring like top people in. That's how I learned even how to do my podcast. You interview a whole bunch of people for 10 years once a month on stage about anti-aging stuff. You learn to do the skills that you have. Like, interviewing people is a skill, and you've mastered the skill. Well, I mastered it on stage with people in a room outside Stanford University. And so after being inspired by these people, I said, look, I know that if I can come back from being old when I was young, maybe I can stay younger for longer. Mm. And then the 180 number, man, it pisses some people off. But there's a few quotes that didn't even make it into the book. One of them is, before we invented the car, the top minds at the time said, you know what? If you go faster than 16 miles an hour, it'll pull the oxygen out of the car and you'll be unable to breathe. They absolutely believe this. Okay, and of course, the first car comes along and they're like, pretty sure that didn't happen. It might have been 26 miles an hour, by the way. I could be wrong on the number. 16 seems a little low. But anyway, what they figured out is that wasn't true. And the same thing, yeah, I'm going to fly. Like, no, you're not going to fly. But my favorite quote of all is from the head general in the U.S. Army. And he's talking to Congress in 1940-something. And he says, I speak as an expert on munitions and explosives. That atomic bomb thing will never go off. So look, I'm gonna live to 180, right? And maybe I'll die trying, right? But if it's not me, it's someone that I know. Like, it might be you. It's someone listening to the show right now. And here's the deal. 120 is in the bag because we've already seen it.
Yep.
Right? And these are people who they drink, they smoke, they do whatever. It was accidental. And they probably had good genes, right? There's also a good number of people who are 120 who are actually just taking advantage of their parents' insurance because they're not really 120. They're just really old. So it turns out a substantial number of people who claim to be really old aren't as old as they say they are. But we know we can do it.
Yeah, it's been done.
Right. So now let's see. Given that I've interviewed for Superhuman and for my show, just dozens and dozens of the people cracking the code of aging. The top people on earth, Nobel Prize winners. And you know what? We know more than we ever have. You and me can right now pick up our phone and go to Google and access more knowledge, more research, more information than a king or a president 30 years ago. I mean, it's unfathomable. Do you remember microfiche?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. So I'm dating myself here. I'm 46. I'm not 96, right? When I was starting college, I had one of the first search engine accounts, but no one else in my class knew what the internet was.
Was this like 90?
It was like 94.
94.
94, 95. So to go do research for a paper, you'd go to the library and you get these little transparent plastic card things, and they're like photocopied into super small, almost like a microscope, and you put on these little readers and you sit there and turn a little knob to read things. And it was so crazy. And then what I do is I'd go home and I would use this website called Alta Vista, one of the first search engines. And I was making these papers. And my professor's like, "Oh my God, this is the best research ever. Like, I love this paper." And I'm sort of laughing, going, like, it's because I can search better than you. Man. And I look at where we are now. I couldn't write Superhuman. It would have taken me 10 years to write this book 10 years ago. Yeah, but now the information's all there. Yeah. So the speed of progress is happening. And given that I know the people doing the work who've been at it for decades, I'll be damned if we can't do 50% better over the next 100 years of my life. Like, look at where we were 100 years ago. We were fighting wars with horses in 1919. Okay? It's a whole different world. If we don't do 180, I'm stupid. And if a truck hits me tomorrow, I'm stupid too, just to be clear.
Man, this is so awesome, man. If you're thinking about, even in the book, you detail some of the stories of just historically, we've been chasing immortality.
Yeah.
Our ancestors were kind of looking for this virtual fountain of youth, and they found little pieces here and there.
Yeah.
And it's again, like where we're at now with technology, with our access to information, it is really inspiring. And one of those things that I admire about you was you chased after it early, because you found this information out.
Dude, being old sucks if you do it the wrong way. And I just did it the wrong way when I was young. Yeah. Like, I chased after it because it was a painful, crappy thing to wake up every day and be like, my body hurts and I can't think. Like, to be really clear, I was a little selfish about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you found yourself in Nepal and knees hurting. You were traversing, I think you were coming down altitude first.
From the Annapurna circuit in one day to make a flight.
And when was this? How old were you around this?
Let's see. This would have been 2004.
Okay.
So whatever, 30-ish, 32 maybe. So I descended 7,500 vertical feet in one day. And that's more than a mile. And it's just basically coming on passes. I was using trekking poles, but by the end of the day, I was like, my knees really hurt. And the next day I woke up, I couldn't walk across the street to get breakfast.
With the poles?
With the poles. I mean, I was truly disabled. And I was like, man, I got 1 or 2 days to resupply. And then I'm getting on a bus for 5 days to go from Kathmandu to Lhasa. And then I'm going to somehow make my way across to the other side of Tibet, and I'm going to walk around this mountain. There's the holiest mountain in the world. And I didn't have it planned very well. It was sort of just let things happen the way they're going to. But I was thinking, I don't think I could walk 100 yards. So I said, let's see how fast I could recover while I'm at super high altitude driving over passes in the Himalayas. It was a challenge.
So I think you already had some education about collagen, and so you were looking for a little dose.
Well, I knew that I knew about collagen, and I knew that you really can't buy collagen. And so I said, all right, what can I do? I went to this little restaurant. I say a little restaurant. There's a town. It's got 4 buildings, and you all sleep in this big shared room. The beds are like 5 feet long. I'm 6'4", so I'm hanging off the end of the bed. And there's one restaurant, and I go in there, and the menu's in Chinese. And so I asked the Chinese guy who's on the bus with me, And he said, read the menu. And he said, pig's ears. And I'm like, oh, man, that's the only thing on here that's full of collagen. I was hoping there'd be like pig's feet, which are equally gross, actually. But you need something that's all gristly and nasty. And so I've never eaten pig's ears. And they're ice cold. It just steamed pig's ears, just a huge bowl. It had to be like a dozen or so pig's ears. I'm like, this is nasty. Like chicken's feet would have been better. So what'd I do? I ordered soup, and I would like dip the thing in the soup, and then I
try to warm it up.
And then just rubbery nastiness. But I was like, I need building blocks. My body's not healing because I've got nothing to make it out of. And I was traveling with handfuls of supplements. These weren't the collagen sort of things. The next day, I could walk again. I mean, it was transformative, and I started healing, and I ended up getting to the point where I was fully healed, and I could walk 26 miles at up to 18,000 feet elevation around the mountain 10 days later. But it was that thing. I came back on that mountain is when I had yak butter tea that turned my brain back on, and it was collagen that turned my knees back on. And I came back and said, I got to do this. And it's kind of funny. Bulletproof put collagen on the map. Like the reason it's a supplement that's cool and for high performers instead of your mom's Jell-O, which was the only place you'd ever get collagen before. It's because of that trip.
Wow, awesome, man, so awesome. So, and just shout out first of all, you couldn't even walk with the walking sticks. Shout out to people who just walk down the street with walking sticks.
Oh yeah, I love that.
I'm just like, I thought it was kind of weird, like it's LA, 90 degrees, and they're just out there trekking down the sidewalk, but it's a thing.
Have you ever used them?
I have not, no.
All right, there's an actual skill. I used to do a lot of backpacking before I had kids. When you have kids, you stop doing like yoga and backpacking and stuff like that because they tend to take a lot of time. So you might do a little bit, but not like you did. So you're going to do long distance, like John Muir Trail or something. Almost everyone uses them now. And when you learn to walk like a four-legged creature, it changes your brain. You cross pattern, but you can carry so much more, and you get an upper body workout. So you see all these hikers, if they've hiked 500 miles, what they have is these super massive legs and super skinny arms. But if you use trekking poles, you actually maintain the muscle mass, and you get all that lymphatic movement. So I'd say if you're going to walk 10 miles and you learn how to use the poles, you feel better when you're done. And also, let's look at knee replacement and hip replacement surgery. It's happening all over the place. Maybe not wearing them out is a good idea. So I think spreading the load, especially if you've got a backpack on, there's a really good argument for trekking poles.
Awesome. So one of the things that jumped into my mind when you were kind of laying out this really strong argument of how long we can live and how long a lot more people are going to live, I immediately thought about, what about overpopulation?
It's funny. A lot of people don't know my first book was about fertility. I spent 5 years writing it. My wife was infertile, and we restored her fertility using food and vitamins and testing and things without IVF or anything like that. We had one kid at 39, one at 42, and she's a Karolinska-trained physician. So I know a thing or two about fertility, and I'll just tell you straight up, we don't have a population problem. We have one right now. We won't have one in 50 years from now because the fertility rate is declining because our health is going down so fast as a species. And that sounds really scary, but the solution to that problem is live a long time and wait, because people literally who want to reproduce can't reproduce. And on top of that, if you look at the number of people who are choosing to have kids in every developed nation right now, even when they can have kids, it's going down dramatically. And it's happened in Japan, it's happened in China, it's certainly happening in the US. So we have all these aging populations. And one dark picture of the future is you have a bunch of aging, infirm populations with no young people to take care of them. That kind of sounds crappy. Another possible future is that you have these aging populations of people who are now the village elders and have lots of time, energy, and desire to give back to their communities and to help the people who don't know all the stuff that you learn by taking arrows in your back for 8 decades. Right. The things you might have learned about how to have a good marriage because you only failed at them 3 or 4 times over the course of your life, and now you're probably kind of a pro and you can tell the 25-year-old getting married for the first time what not to do. This is called wisdom.
Right.
And when we have an older population whose brains work and bodies work the way they're supposed to, we will have an epidemic of wisdom.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to that. The other thing is, if you really realize at your core, you know what? I might be around 100 years from now. I might be around 200 years from now. Maybe I shouldn't poop in my own sandbox. right? You're going to have to take care of the world you live in better. You're going to have to take a long-term view because guess what? You're a long-term animal now, right? So you stop using single use when you can, or you recycle when you do, and you make better decisions, right? And I believe that if we think, look, life is short, mean, brutal, then you spend 20 years hooked up to tubes and monitors while the medical industrial system drains your bank account. If that's your picture of the world, you're going to act like an asshole, right? And if your picture of the world is that I'm going to be old and wise and fully able to move under my own power, and I'm going to know so much cool stuff, and I'm going to be able to help so many people, and it's going to be awesome, and I'm going to meet my great grandkids and actually be friends with them, you're going to behave differently. And it's the change in behavior that matters. And to change your behavior, you have to change how you see the future.
Wow, facts. Absolutely. Well, I want to get into science now.
All right.
And you really, again, lay out a really great case that the foundation for longevity begins with our mitochondria.
Yeah. It turns out in Superhuman, I go really deep, but I wrote a whole book about mitochondria that it hit the New York Times Science bestseller list, which is, for me as an author, I didn't think I'd ever do that. It was sandwiched between Homo Deus and Sapiens. So the little headstrong was in there. I was like, okay, that's the coolest thing ever. And that was my big focus on mitochondria in the brain. So in Superhuman, it's not just mitochondria. They're certainly a part of it. These mitochondria, for people who haven't heard of that, they're these power plants in the cells. But really, that's a simplification. What they're actually doing is they're sensing the environment around you and deciding what to do on a second-by-second basis. And sometimes they make power, but other times they make hormones. Other times they make chemicals that you need. And they're kind of the puppet masters inside your body. But they're inside your cells. They're ancient bacteria that became a part of us. And the other things inside the cells are equally important. So aging starts at the cell. And you have these things called lysosomes inside cells. And all these different things that you might remember the names of because you colored them in 7th grade biology, and no one ever told you why they mattered. Right. And in fact, they generally didn't matter back then because we didn't understand. Yeah. Well, now we know the 4 things that are going to kill you, and we know pretty much 7 of the things that are likely to make you age. And the trick here that's revolutionary in the idea behind Superhuman is that you can't say, oh, you know what? My car's going to last forever. I'm just going to make sure I change the tires all the time. Because you might have to do some other stuff, right? You have to change all of the maintenance things that you're doing. So you change the oil, you do your timing belts when it's time, you change the tires, and you do the things you do to continuously maintain and repair the system. Our bodies are the same way, and we just know more than we ever did. That makes it easier to do. It also means that if you know that your tires are going to wear out, maybe you ought to not drive over all the potholes when you have a chance, right? So we can do both. And a lot of the arguments in Superhuman are, here's the things you're doing that increase the speed of your aging that don't give you any benefit, right? So maybe we could just stop doing those, because if you're going to go eat something that tasted good and one thing that tastes good messes up your cells and the other one doesn't, better choice. I describe aging as death by 1,000 cuts. It's not just one thing. So just take fewer cuts, make them less deep. You're still going to take hits. That's the nature of life, right? Because sometimes it's fun, right? Right? There's nothing wrong with having fun. I'm not talking about living in a cave or a bubble. I'm just saying when you can make a choice that both choices are good, both of them are pleasurable, do the one that gives you less damage and then consciously repair the damage.
Right. So one of the big tenets is, which is so obvious, is for longevity, don't die. Right, so you talk about
that one works pretty well.
And specifically, you outline 4 killers.
Yeah.
Right, there's the 4 main killers, the top things right now that are taking us out, and you also relate with each of these 4 things, which was really beautiful to see how inflammation is tied into each of these 4 killers. So let's talk about the 4 killers and how inflammation relates to each one.
It seems kind of ironic, like, okay, you want to live forever, don't die. Done. That was the whole book, but then you say, all right, let's assume that you and me are average. And I got to tell you, we're not average. Like we're here in LA. We're doing a podcast. We can choose our food more so than the average human being. And all of the numbers we look at, they're usually just all over the place. So the numbers I'm going to talk about are for developed nations, but this includes the people who live on Pop-Tarts and ramen and margarine. So we're not average.
Our former diet.
There you go. Now, 4 things that are going to kill almost everyone listening to this, at least 80% of them, one or the other. One of them is cancer. And the rate of cancer is up dramatically. Something like 40% of people get it in their lifetime. The good news is that you die half as often from cancer as we used to. We actually can cure cancer better than we could, although we're still far from curing it. And a lot of times the cure is pretty brutal, to be honest. But our survival rates are up because our early detection rates are better. But maybe not getting cancer is the right strategy here. That's the one that I'm pursuing. And also detecting early if you get it, because it's relatively easy to get rid of cancer. In fact, you and me, we have cancer right now, unquestionably. There are precancerous cells circulating in our bodies, and our natural killer cells are going through and knocking those things out. Like, it's just how the body works. So there's nothing to worry about there. But if you were to do a few things in your lifestyle, or maybe some of the more extreme things in here around cancer, you're saying, all right, I just reduced my chances. The next one that's likely to take you out is cardiovascular disease. In fact, it may be more likely than cancer in terms of death. And cardiovascular disease is stroke and heart attack, and it's rampant. It turns out we know more about that than ever before. And one of the things I call out here is that we like to say, oh, you ate some cholesterol, you're bad, there was an egg yolk. Look, 2 studies now have looked at the very specific type of fat that's building up in your arteries. Newsflash, they didn't come from your food. They came from the bacteria in your gut. They are fats made by bacteria. All of this vegan nonsense about, oh, you can't eat fat, animal products cause cardiovascular disease, BS. Now, eating an animal that ate antibiotics and corn and soy that then modified your gut bacteria to make them turn against you so that they made the things that are okay. Now we're talking. So in terms of vegan nonsense, don't eat industrial animals fed antibiotics ever. They will shorten your life, and it's stupid, and it's bad for the animals, it's bad for the planet, and it's evil. I don't do that. I actually live on a farm, and I raise my own animals. But you can't do that. Go to the farmer's market, or at least get grass-fed or wild-caught beef. And if you go to a restaurant and they only have industrial meat, it's real easy. Order the vegetarian meal, but skip the tofu. That stuff is gross. All right. That was my rant about cardiovascular disease. Butter is not bad for you. All right. Next up, we have type 2 diabetes, rampant. And type 2 diabetes is really evil because it increases your risk of dying from cancer and heart disease dramatically. And most people start out with that, and then they get one of the other ones. By the way, the other killer is Alzheimer's disease, about 10% of people. And diabetes increases your risk dramatically of all of those. So let's focus on diabetes. What is diabetes really? It's your body's inability to turn food and air into energy, into electrons. The same electrons that power your iPhone power you. What part of the cell does that? Might it be the mitochondria? Yes. So then how do we hack the mitochondria? Well, fortunately, that's an area of pretty strong expertise for me. It turns out every cell in your body and subcellular components like mitochondria, they have membranes. Now, you and me would think of a membrane as being, like a baggie, like a plastic layer. That's not really what they are. I was thinking, okay, maybe it's more like a condom. A little bit stretchy, maybe some things can get through there. They're not like that either. What they are is more like when you have a sheen of oil on the top of water. It's a thin layer of tiny droplets of fat that repel water on both sides. So they kind of string together. Well, what fat might be important? And a big part of at least the diabetes angle in Superhuman, and Superhuman, by the way, is not a diet book. I mean, you've read it. There's some stuff about food, but this is about living to 180 and all the stuff you do. But from a nutritional perspective, if you were to eat the types of fat that your body needs to make healthy membranes, one of the biggest things that helps with highly functioning mitochondria, which then prevents diabetes, is have membranes that allow sugar and fat in and have all the components needed to make energy inside the cell. And that means 45% of the fat in your cell membranes is saturated fat. And this is why you can laugh when people say don't eat saturated fat. However, it's very interesting to note that you could say, oh, this is permission to eat a high-fat diet. Except it's not, because different fats do different things. And who would have thought? And you could say, well, margarine and corn oil, those are probably different than coconut oil. There must be some differences. It turns out the type of fat really matters. So you're not going to never eat any, quote, bad fats, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you have a choice between smoking a cigarette and eating a plate of French fries, smoke the cigarette. And the data is very clear on that. Nicotine actually has some anti-aging effects. Smoking is terrible for you, though. You shouldn't do it. But your inflammation is going to last for about 8 hours. The inflammation from the French fries is good for 24 hours. And that nasty fat is going to get taken up in your cell membranes. And when it gets taken up, it's going to make free radicals. So seriously, I don't care if it's calamari or Brussels sprouts. If it's deep fried, especially at a restaurant where they've been using that oil for God knows how long, just don't do it. You don't eat that anymore. It's not food. And just like you shouldn't smoke if you want to live a long time. So you got to pay attention to that. And the other thing is, people say, oh, then you should eat a high protein diet. Look, what kind of protein? You know my favorite plant-based protein? It's ricin, the nerve gas that they use in the subway Tokyo Attack. It comes from beans. Okay, so there you go, plant-based people. Plant-based protein will kill you. Oh, well, okay, then what about animal-based protein? Oh, spider venom. That stuff is kind of probably bad to eat too. So animal-based protein will kill you. Or, dare I say, different proteins from different sources do different things, and you cannot be simplistic like a child and say, I'm going to eat protein from animals or plants, because it doesn't matter unless you know what protein it is and what it does. The same is true for fat, and the same is true for carbs. Like I just made a new prebiotic that is 100% carbs, that doesn't raise your blood sugar at all, feeds your gut bacteria, but it's a carb. It's a little different from corn syrup, right? How do we sort this out? We have to stop thinking about those simplistic categories because they're stupid. And that's in Superhuman. I'm like, look, these are the fats to prioritize. These are the ones to deprioritize, and here's why.
Yeah. You know, and I know you've probably dealt with this too, but, you know, in dealing with the publisher, a lot of the powers that be really don't think people can get this stuff. You know, we really want to simplify things. Yeah. And they've said the words, you know, dumb it down. I don't agree at all. I think that people are smart enough, and I think that we are well equipped to understand the complexity. This is bigger than that.
There's a book by my friend Ryan Holiday, who's a great author. I don't know if you've ever had him on. And it's called Perennial Seller. And it's a book about the mindset that goes into writing a great book. And you understand it because you don't want to dumb it down. And you have a moral obligation to explain it in a way that's consumable. But you can disrespect people by just, oh, I'm going to make it so dumb. Just do this. But look, the people who listen to your show, the people who read Superhuman, people who read your writing, they want to know that there's a reason to do what they do, and they want to know what the reason is. So I look at it, I believe the same way you do. Say, look, here's what to do. And if that's all you want, go to the next chapter. Right? But if you want to know why and how, and you want to learn how to think so you can take care of yourself forever, it's in there. And that's really hard to do.
Yeah. In the discussion on diabetes, you mentioned glucosamine in there as well. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Glucosamine or glucosamine, and to be honest, I do not know how to say that. And I just read my whole audiobook in the same studio we're recording in right now.
Right. That's so cool.
And I said it both ways in the audiobook, and they didn't catch me. So you have a little person listening.
As long as you're not saying salmon.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
It's all good.
Glucosamine. God, someone's going to put it in your show and tell me exactly what it is. But when I was maybe 14, I read in some Men's Health magazine or something that you should try this. So I bought it, and I'm like, man, my knees feel way better. And I didn't know why, other than it said it was supposed to work. And I tried a different brand. It didn't work as well. And I figured out the form that worked. And it was just a titration exercise. If I take it, can I play soccer or not? And it turns out glucosamine now we know has a bunch of anti-aging powers because it changes the way mitochondria use sugar. So it was probably helping with my blood sugar. And it's an anti-aging substance that is widely talked about that almost no one knows. Think, oh, it's just for joints. No, it's for inflammation. So I talk about the pathways in there. It's dirt cheap. So it's a really good idea to be taking glucosamine on a regular basis if you want to live a long time and not have joint replacement surgery 25 years from now.
And there you have it. So we talked about the 4 killers. Then you shift gears and you talk about 7 pillars of aging. So these are the 7 things that are really little known, in my opinion, that are the biggest catalysts that are moving us towards aging. So we talked about don't die.
Yep.
Now we're looking at the things that accelerate our aging. And I want to go through just a couple of these.
All right.
The first one was mitochondrial mutations.
Yep.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So mitochondria, you have anywhere between 200 to 15,000 mitochondria inside each cell in your body, except your red blood cells. They're free of mitochondria. And the cells that have the most energy requirement have the most of these things, the ones that are most important. So your brain cells and heart cells are the most studded with mitochondria. And they're smart little things. and you get all their DNA from your mom, at least if you're like most people. There's a few other weird corner cases where other stuff happens, but essentially these are passed down from 9 women in somewhere 11, 12,000 years ago. All of us are related to one of 9 great grandmothers. And problem is that these mitochondria mutate relatively easily over the course of your life. And it doesn't mean you won't hand on the right genes to your offspring, but as they mutate, you don't make energy as well. And what happens every time when your mitochondria can't turn a molecule of food and a molecule of oxygen into an electron, it makes inflammation. Inflammation leads to diabetes and all the 4 killers. So these mutations build up and we don't have repair systems. So what do? There's practices that don't cost anything that are in Superhuman that cause mitochondrial biogenesis. There's relatively affordable, like $50, $60 affordable compounds that grow new mitochondria. There's certain types of exercise. There's types of sleep. So what you want to do is put your body through these brief periods of intense stress so the body looks around and goes, oh, that mitochondria can't really make heat right now, or it can't make energy right now. I guess I should kill it. Because your body will prune the weak mutated mitochondria and kick their asses out of there and grow fresh young ones if you give it the right instructions. Guess what? We have not been taught to give it the right instructions. Mother Nature was very elegant in our design because 150 years ago, there was probably some angry buffalo chasing you every now and then, or a tiger trying to eat you, and there was times you didn't have any food, and there were times you were a little cold, and the body would go, oh, I guess I should take care of this. Well, we don't get any of that anymore, and it turns out those are important signals. They're just unpleasant. So how do we get those signals to happen in the minimum possible amount of time with the least inconvenience and the least cost? I'm down for that, and that's what's in Superhuman.
One of the things that's so fascinating about that is that today we know that it's not just our DNA that we need to be concerned about. We've got trillions of bacteria that live with us, that live within us, on our skin and in our bodies. And they have their own genes. Our mitochondria has its own DNA that can get damaged. And so we need to look out for the well-being of not just our DNA, but our mitochondrial DNA can get damaged even easier, which is just super fascinating to me. And this is one of the things that you really highlight and talk about in the book.
When you really think about it, we have this collection of bacteria and it talks to our bacteria, and there's all kinds of cross reactions. Wired magazine had an article a few years ago that had the best headline, I think, of any article I've ever seen. And it said something like, you are surrounded by a cloud of fart bacteria. You're like, great guys, I'm horrified, or skin and fart bacteria. But what the point of the article was is that with genetic sequencing, when we leave this room 2 hours from now, they could come in with the forensics team, measure the microbiome in the air, and determine that we were in this room if they know our microbiome. Okay, so it's not just our bodies. There's no sovereign entity. There's no boundary to where you are. But what that means is you're a hollow tube, right? Because food comes in, it replaces cells in your body, and then you shed your skin and you poop out the other stuff. So you and me, our bodies don't even exist. We're just like a whirlpool in a stream. There's matter coming in, there's matter coming out. That's super powerful because that means you can modify the matter coming in. And what can you do to make the whirlpool that is you more coherent to stick around for longer? That's anti-aging.
So the next one of these pillars, and I'm so grateful that you talked about this one, was zombie cells. Zombie cells. Can you talk about what that is?
As you age, your body has cells that stop doing their job, but they don't get out of the way. They call them senescent cells is the scientific term. So now we've got these cells that are sitting there. They make free radicals. They take up space, but they don't do their job. So the question now is, all right, if I want to be young when I'm old, how do I make sure I don't have very many zombie cells floating around? When you're young, you don't have many. As you age, they go up predictably. So it turns out that there are some of the things that are similar to creating new mitochondria, things you can do that help. Fasting helps. There's enzymes that you can take that help. And there's even some new drugs that are radically shown to improve cell senescence. And what that means is that as you age, you're probably going to have to just figure this out. And the techniques, there's a list of bullet points in here of things you can do now. Some of them are billionaire techniques. And I mean, I've done crazy stem cell things, probably more stem cells in one sitting than any human ever as part of the research for this. But hey, I'm going to live to 180. Someone had to do it. And everything in here, there's a free version that gives you the benefits, most we can get. And then there's this is what crazy people are doing. I haven't done it yet, but I'm signed up, or this is something I did do. But just like cell phones, if we go back 20, 30 years, the only person with a cell phone was the investment banker, and the whole trunk of their car was the phone, and this giant thing up to their head, and it's $25 a minute, and everyone would swear at them. Look at that. Who does he think he is with his cell phone? And now they're $1 a month in Africa. Okay. Anti-aging technologies are the same as cell phones. They are coming. Some of them are expensive now. Some of them are cheap now. You just don't know about them. But the expensive ones, they'll drop in price just like computer chips. And the demand is that strong. And it's our job as podcasters, as health influencers, just tell people, hey, this stuff is real. And once the demand is there, I promise you, as an entrepreneur, that we will make it for you at a price you can afford, because that's what entrepreneurs do.
All right, so we know that we have these zombie cells, potential zombie cells. And this goes back to this conversation about apoptosis, this programmed cell death. So what I'm hearing is that we don't need to be as concerned about overpopulation out there as overpopulation in our bodies.
It's a good point. If you have overpopulation of zombie cells, you have an issue.
Yeah.
But one of the other pillars of aging is actually cell loss. And as you age, you run out of stem cells. And that means you get tissue exhaustion, something called sarcopenia, or loss of muscle mass. There's a reason when you have the stereotypical picture of an older person, there's thin skin, they're frail, they don't have muscle mass. Well, that is all tissue loss. So what would happen if you could make your stem cells stay strong? What if you could replace your stem cells? Would you reduce sarcopenia? What if you just did things that didn't let your cells die as much as they did before? Mm. And what if you caused programmed cell death for the cells that needed to die, like cancer cells, and had a healthy immune system? So those are the things that I write about in Superhuman. And the deal is, this is like multiple college courses in weird biology that no one is actually going to study. So it comes down to, at the end of the chapter, there's a set of bullet points, and I'll walk you through the whys and the hows, but you do a few of these things. Don't even do all of them. Just do some of them. And all of a sudden, the number of years that you get goes up, maybe. We think, hopefully. And certainly what's going to happen is you're not going to feel like garbage when you're old. And that's really important. So you just don't lose when you do this.
Yeah. So we've got cell loss. We've got mitochondrial mutations.
Right.
Zombie cells. So with the zombie cell thing, so what you're really saying is there's we could have a zombie apocalypse. Potentially. Is that what you're saying?
In fact, part of aging is a zombie apocalypse.
Okay.
It's
you heard it here first. Dave said it. It's the real thing.
Yeah.
So zombie apocalypse actually takes place. 3 foods you have to eat for a year. What are they?
3 foods only for a year? I would say you really are not going to be very happy unless you have some avocados. Right? Pretty stereotypical answer,
there you
though.
go.
But bottom line is it's got fat and carbs in it. It's pretty good. I'm going to tell you straight up, grass-fed ribeye is going to be really important. You've got to get those fat-soluble nutrients in the meat, and you're going to want some of that protein. The great thing, though, and we didn't talk about this much, most people listening right now are eating too much protein. You don't need that much protein, but you need very high-quality protein. So who cares if the ethically raised grass-fed animal is twice as expensive as the industrial mistreated animal? You eat half as much of it, and you replace those protein calories with fat calories from clean fats and with more vegetables. And that works out really, really well for the planet, for the soil, which requires animal poop to be fertile, and things like that. That's why a grass-fed steak is on there, and specifically ribeye, because it's the fattiest cut. Yeah. And the third thing is a real tough one. I'm going to pick sun-dried black olives because they taste good.
Okay.
It's because you actually need some monounsaturated fat for your cell membranes. I'm going to get my saturated fat from the steak. I'm going to get my monounsaturated fat from the avocado. I'll get a little bit of undamaged, because you eat avocados raw, omega-6s, which turns out your cells need some of that, but not very much. And then I'm going to fill the rest in with the polyphenols from the olives.
Yeah.
And polyphenols are these colored compounds from plants that control a lot of what your gut bacteria do and what your mitochondria do. They're even necessary for making melanin, the pigment in your skin. And so there you go. I'm going to have basically guacamole, sun-dried olives on grass-fed steak, and I'm going to feel great.
There you go. And no zombies eating you.
Absolutely.
I love that. You know, and I'm glad you mentioned that we do need some omega-6s, because they've really been drugged through the mud for good reason.
Yeah.
But the quality, getting them from a good source. But they're still there as, quote, essential fatty acids. So we need them from our diet.
They're essential because you can't make them. And what I found was fascinating new research that didn't even exist when I wrote the Bulletproof Diet. And I was right, fortunately, in the Bulletproof Diet, just from talking with clinicians and just saying what works, but we didn't actually measure it. And researchers went through and they looked at what the fat ratios of cell membranes are for different types of cells in the body. And then they measured what happens when you change the type of fat you eat. And it turns out that your adipose tissue, the fat in your body, it swings with what you eat very dramatically. So if you eat a lot of omega-6 fats, you will store way more omega-6 fat in your fat tissue, and it'll create inflammation there. So if you do that, though, your brain won't change nearly as much as your fat tissues do. So you can control inflammation by controlling the ratio of the fats you eat. And since 45% of your brain cells are saturated fats, just like in the Bulletproof Diet, I did say 50% of your fat calories should be saturated. I was off by 5%, man. Sorry. But there's pretty good evidence for it. In fact, the body will manufacture palmitic acid.
Yeah,
so it's really fascinating that that the cells in your brain, the cells in your heart, the cells in your muscles, they do different things when you change the type of fat you eat. They all require omega-6, but it's a relatively small amount, and it's got to be undamaged omega-6. Yeah. If it's been extracted from corn, safflower, canola, soy, they use hexane and other solvents. They use heat. And omega-6 oils, even from flax, they're unstable in light, sunlight, light from the incandescents or LEDs in your house, heat, and oxygen break these things down. So you pretty much want to eat them when they're fresh inside a nut that hasn't been roasted, when they're in an avocado, when they're in olive oil that has antioxidants that protect them and hasn't been deep fried or heated in a pan. It's that important.
And I definitely want to talk about this one, which is cellular straitjackets.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
We all know what it's like to get a callus. And you're saying, oh, my skin isn't flexible right there. It's on my foot, whatever. Well, the same thing happens in your cells. And we build something called amyloid plaques throughout the body. Most people have heard of amyloid plaques because of Alzheimer's disease, where there's something called beta amyloid. Well, you get, whenever there's inflammation throughout your body, you build up these plaques, and these are like straitjackets. They keep your cells from doing what they're supposed to do. So we got to ask ourselves, what do we know about what causes plaque to form? And once you realize that, oh, amyloid can be affected by all kinds of dietary things, by all kinds of exercise things, and there's even some new drugs that can reverse this kind of formation of amyloid, you realize it's the same thing as a professional ball player. Right? Maybe if someone hits you in the knee 15 times, you're going to need a knee replacement. But if you could get hit in the knee less, you'll need less replacement. So this is the scar tissue that builds up over time in or around the cells. And you got to do something if you have a lot of it. And this is a real simple thing. Look, if you're 20 years old, like, man, I'm just going to make a few changes. These aren't painful changes. These aren't changes that take any more energy than what you already do. You're just going to change a habit from A to B, right? Equal amount of pleasure, equal amount of time, equal amount of money. But the new one, I got less amyloid forming. And if you're older, you're saying, all right, I'm definitely going to stop pouring gas on the fire, and maybe I'll actually reverse it.
I love that visual of thinking about a straitjacket with ourselves.
It's like that. And they got to move around. And it's fascinating when you dig into this cellular biology. People don't know this, but those little mitochondria inside a cell, they have a way to move around. They'll actually make a little transport thing like a bus. They call it a shuttle. And then a mitochondria like, oh, I need more energy over here. They'll move a power plant like they do for a concert. Like it'll go through the neuron and go over here where it can make some energy, and then it'll move back over here. There's crazy levels of stuff that's totally invisible to us. No one knew about this 30 years ago because we just couldn't see it. And now we're looking at stuff happening inside of our cells. In fact, just last year, they found another organ system that no one knew about in the skin, because they only looked at the skin of dead animals under a microscope. It's like, oh, we can look at live animals, and holy crap, there's this whole part of the lymph system that no one knew about. So we don't know very much, but we know way more than we did, and that can guide us in what to do. So you feel good when you're old, and you live longer.
Yeah, and one of those things that tightens the straitjacket more than anything, well, one of the strongest things for us to be aware of is these advanced glycation end products.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
Now, I wrote about advanced glycation end products in the Bulletproof Diet, and there's two forms of these that we get. This is what happens when you get a sugar and it interacts with a protein, and they stick together to form a hard to break down compound that creates free radicals. And the easiest way to envision this, you throw onions in a pan, turn on the pan, you get browned onions. The brown stuff is advanced glycation end product. Now, I made the argument in the Bulletproof Diet that eating advanced glycation end products is probably a bad idea, but even worse is eating a large amount of sugar or any other food that raises blood sugar. Because if you got sugar coursing around in your body and your body is made out of protein, fat, and water, you're going to get advanced glycation end products inside your arteries, inside your cells.
So you're caramelizing yourself.
Yeah. So number one, don't eat sugar. And if you have 3 grams of sugar, no one cares, right? Like seriously. But if you do what most people do, I'll just have a few of these little candies and I'll have, a whole bunch of ice cream and I'll do a bunch of this, a bunch of that. That does cause advanced glycation, which contributes to aging via pathways we understand. It creates these amyloids. So what about eating then? Well, since 2014, when the Bulletproof Diet came out, there's been a little bit more research. And there are now several studies that I cite in Superhuman about the effects of eating advanced glycation end products. And here's the deal. Food that is highly caramelized, like caramel, is bad for you. It increases your aging because it's full of AGEs. It says right there in the name. And when you look at things like overcooking meat and charring meat, it is a well-known risk. And when someone says eating meat's bad for you, massive question. How did you cook it? Because a deep-fried, microwaved, char-grilled, smoked, and dipped in honey sauce piece of meat is still meat. It just might have a different effect on you than a piece of sashimi, which is also meat. You have to think about it. It's not as simple as saying meat is good or bad. That's dumb. And I can tell you plants aren't good or bad either, because if you walk outside right now and you take a bite of the first plant you see, if you don't end up in the hospital, you're going to end up in the bathroom, because most plants will kill you if you eat them. So it's simplistic and stupid to be plant-based or animal-based. Those are meaningless, and this is a prime example of why. And so burned meat, particularly bad for you.
Yeah. You know what's so funny? We've been having these little synchronicities. I read that in the book yesterday about caramelizing your insides. Yeah. And then for the first time in my relationship with my wife, we've been together for 16 years. And she made something with caramelized onions. I was like, this is so interesting. Like, first time ever. And then, we got here and we had I brought you some Ease Magnesium. Yeah. Right, from our friend Ian Clark, which is a topical magnesium. It's great for pain relief and relaxation, all that good stuff. And you had a little bit of a tweak to your back because of wrestling a pig or something?
Yeah, I do live on a farm. And one of the things that I talk about here for natural killer cells is, funny, if you breathe the things that trees make, things called terpenes, some of the essential oils, it actually increases natural killer cell activities in the body. It changes your microbiome, especially live on a farm. So I'm on a small farm. We have 8 pigs and 10 sheep. Actually, we have 9 sheep now. One of them just died, and the turkey vultures ate its eyes. It was horrifying. Wow. I'm telling you, Mother Nature does not want you to live, just in case you were wondering. You got to take ownership of that. Anyhow, we're moving the pigs from one place to another. And the pig's job in nature, they're awesome. They clean up the land. So you move them around and they pile up the rocks, they get rid of all the brush, they break up stumps, and that's why we have wild pigs in our ecosystem. And then what comes out of that is an amazing pasture. And then the sheep come in and their job is just to shit everywhere. And they're walking fertilizer machines that cause the soil to build up mass, which pulls carbon dioxide out of the air. And it's this beautiful system, and I'm living in it, and I can see it. But that means you got to move the damn pigs from one thing to another. And pigs, they're made out of bacon, which means they're not that smart. And they actually are kind of smart. Anyway, I'm pushing on this pig, and he won't move into his new thing. And I'm pushing and pushing, and finally the pig decides to move forward. And I'm like, do I want to faceplant in the mud? No. I'm like, thank God this is not on social media. So I'm leaning forward, and I stuck my left leg out behind me to counterbalance me, like basically a one-legged forward yoga pose thing. And I sprained my back. And I didn't know at the time, like, oh, that didn't feel very good. And we got all the pigs moved, but it's been a little tweaked ever since. Yeah. So I'm walking around with a pig-induced injury.
And again, it was a good synchronicity. I just happened to bring that to you for a gift. Like, I was looking around, like, what can I bring Dave today? And it just jumped out at me.
Thank you.
Yeah, so cool. And then, of course, you were looking for a phone charger. I put one in my bag today for the first time, but we found an alternative.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So caramelized onions, man. But listen.
And I want to say something, though, about caramelized onions. Look. They taste good. Fajitas are awesome. Although the bell peppers are nightshades, they're probably not that good for you. But here's the deal. If you eat caramelized onions occasionally, it's all right. Yeah. Right? It's a delicacy. If you eat caramelized onion smoothies because you think they're healthy, you're doing it wrong. Yeah. Right? Like there's limits and there's normal amounts of things. But if you eat caramelized onions in every meal and you say, you know what, I'm going to have dessert afterwards, and I'm going to have sugar for breakfast, and I have sugar for lunch, and sugar for dinner, and all these peaks of blood sugar, you are going to get old, and you're not going to like what it feels like when you're old. Yeah. And that's the mindset here. Perfection is one of those things that will make you old. Right. Because you worry all the time, and worry makes you old. There's a huge amount of stuff in Superhuman about stress and what it does for you. So this isn't about orthorexia. This isn't about being perfect. It's like, look, what if you cook the onions a little bit less? And it still tasted good. Like, could you make a soup that way? Could you make the meal you wanted to make? And if you could, less caramelizing is preferable. But it's not going to kill you if you caramelize your onions, because that's the way your mom did it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, because that's one of the things we tend to turn to is just like, so you're saying I can't.
Yeah.
So you're saying I can't have. And really what it's going to ultimately boil down to is that stress of trying to do everything perfect is aging you, you know, like you just said.
Absolutely.
And just understanding like there's so many great things for us to take advantage of. We just want to err on the side of those things that are extending our lifespan and avoiding the things. But you were pretty hardcore on avoiding the fried foods, right?
That really matters. And in fact, everything in Superhuman is written through this lens of ROI, return on investment. And everything we do is an investment, but it's not an investment of dollars. That's really like a capitalist American mindset. It's an investment of energy, right? Energy more so than time. Because really, if you have a whole day and you feel like crap, it's not really very useful time. So it's all about your energy first, time second, dollars third, right? And when you look at things like that, all right, what takes the least amount of energy, the least amount of time, the least amount of dollars to give me the most return that I'm seeking? And the return that we're seeking in Superhuman is you want to feel good when you're old, and you want to have more years of your life. So that's the mindset here. And I'll tell you, if you want to get old real fast, use weasel words. And that's a thing from my last book, Game Changers. But can't, need to, and things like have to, and impossible, and try. So I'm going to try to do the things in the book. No, you're not. You already presuppose failure. And you say, I can't do it. Bullshit. You probably aren't going to do it, but maybe you can do it. You just don't know how, right? But if you tell yourself you can't, you won't ever look for how. So stuff like that, mindset is a part of aging. And I tell you, the most important thing that you could do to live a long time, Shawn, isn't anything in the book other than maybe the first chapter, where you look at your picture of aging. And if your picture of aging is wheelchairs, diapers, putting your car keys in the fridge, and tubes and monitors, and an empty bank account, that's probably where you're going to end up. So you change your picture of aging right now to say, I am vibrant, I am walking around, I have healthy relationships, I have friends, I have family, I'm taking care of my community, and my brain works. And that's what the future holds. That will make you age less. And that is provable. There are many studies like that. So just erase the garbage in your mind about old age being infirm and weak and feeble and unable to care for yourself or others. That is not how it was ever meant to be throughout history. And that's not how it is today, unless you let it happen.
Yeah, love it, man. Wow. You know, there's so many things I want to ask you about, but I don't want to glance over something you said earlier. You said melanin. And you actually made it a point to talk specifically about melanin in relationship to longevity. What's up with that?
This is something, it's some of the most fascinating science out there. Melanin makes our skin dark, but there's melanin deep inside your eyes and inside your brain. In fact, scientists used to call this junk melanin. And I learned about this when I was doing the research for Headstrong, my mitochondria science, how to hack your brain book. And it turns out melanin has a superpower. It's unbelievable. It can actually make extra electrons outside of the way normal electrons are made in the body. And it makes electrons when it's heated or vibrated. And that means that the reason your brain has extra melanin that no one could explain, whenever scientists call something junk, it means it's probably useful. We just don't know why.
Right.
Well, the reason that junk melanin is likely in the brain is that it's providing extra power when necessary. And the way your body makes melanin is by cross-linking polyphenols, these colored compounds in food. Coffee is full of something called melanoids, which are melanin precursors. So one of the things that's part of the Headstrong set of things to make your brain work better is how can you increase melanin inside your brain and your eyes and on your skin to the extent your skin can do it. And the way you do that is you eat lots of polyphenols, and this is going to sound totally crazy. You actually go outside without a shirt on.
Wow.
Shocking.
Are you
right?
sure?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds dangerous, but people might have done it in our long history. And you don't go outside for 10 hours. There's actually good evidence that you don't want to overdo it. But if you have a naturally darker complexion, right? Okay, you've got a darker complexion than I do. You need a little bit more sun than I do, right? Except I'm lying, because even though I'm pretty much, they would call it this butt white, it turns out genetically my vitamin D receptors are set up. So I really, according to the functional genomics guys, this company called the DNA Company, they went through my stuff and they said, Dave, you don't look it, but you should be living on a Pacific island. You have the vitamin D receptors of someone with much darker skin. So you got to really watch your consumption of vitamin D. You need to take more of it because you break it down fast and you don't convert that well in sunlight. So like, damned if I do, damned if I don't. You can go down the DNA path, and I talk about DNA analysis and what you might want to do or not do in Superhuman. But bottom line here is, if you can do something to increase melanin in your brain and in your eyes, you're probably going to have better eyes. And let's talk eyesight for a minute. I did some really advanced testing of my eyes to say, all right, what's going on? Because, man, macular degeneration is one of those things you don't want to get when you're old. Oh, I'm old and I'm happy and I have lots of energy and I can't read anymore because my eyes don't work. My dad has it, by the way. So there's stuff you can do with microcurrents and acupuncture points and vitamins and all. And I formulated an eye supplement that I've been taking for years. And I started True Dark. I'm wearing these glasses here from this company that specifically blocks certain damaging blue light. And when I went to the eye doctor, she said, this is crazy. You're 46 years old. You're 20/15 in both eyes. And you can read the very finest print that like a 16-year-old can read without glasses. And, quote, you are exhibiting none of the stiffening of your eyes that we expect to see in someone your age. Something's working.
Yeah, that's so cool. So one of the last things I want to ask you about, again, so many things I want to ask you, is just really in this same vein, because we want to avoid what you call junk light. But then there is some light that we are not getting enough of that are tied to longevity. So let's talk a little bit about that.
It's really interesting when you say, oh, light's good or light's bad. Well, which light? It's the same as fat or protein. Which protein? Yeah. Was this the bad stuff or the good stuff? And then what's the dose? And even what's the timing? We were wired to wake up when the sun comes up. When the sun comes up, it's not very hot. There isn't a lot of infrared light, but there's lots of red light, because that's sunrise, the pink and orange, that kind of color. And then as the day progresses, it sends a signal. 5% of the cells in our eyes are called melanopsin sensing cells. They receive light, but you don't ever see that light. It doesn't go into your visual cortex. It goes around your visual cortex into the timing system that tells your brain what time of day it is, so it knows whether you should be hunting for something or going to sleep, whether you should be making melatonin or you should be making testosterone or whatever else. It really messes with your entire system to get that wrong. And as the day progresses, the angle of the light coming down and the entire spectrum from ultraviolet at the very high end all the way down to infrared, middle of the day. It turns out getting infrared and red light before ultraviolet primes the skin to protect itself. And if we do what we do today, which is you go into an office which has blue lights, these LED lights are very rich in blue spectrum. They have no infrared because that's energy efficient. The body's like, I'm getting hit with the most stressful light source and none of the healing and supportive and priming light sources. So the answer for that is you wake up and go outside with your glasses off, your contacts out, and take your shirt off, or at least have your sleeves rolled up for 20 minutes. And this is how you tell your body that it's morning. And if you do that, you will sleep like a baby at night. And if you, at nighttime, do what I do at home. I installed red outdoor lights instead of white ones, so I don't attract bugs to the house. I don't interfere with the owls and eagles and other birds that live there. But I can go outside and see the stars because I don't blind myself. And indoors, I have dimmer switches. And when I travel, I wear the True Dark sleep glasses. This is a patented set of frequencies so that I can get usually a couple hours of deep sleep, even if I'm in a hotel and I landed at midnight and I was at over-illuminated airports and places like that. It's all about light. And if you want thick, healthy skin, red light and infrared light are shown in lots of studies, and even amber light, which is a new thing that True Dark is doing. They have something called True Light with amber in it. And yes, I'm promoting my own company in case anyone was just wondering. What happens with that stuff, though, is the studies are out there, and they show this is what this color of yellow does to the skin. This is what this color of red does to the skin. This is what infrared does. So I regularly expose myself to that. I travel with those things sometimes and have them at home, and we use them at Upgrade Labs at the Beverly Hilton here and in Santa Monica, where you can lay on giant beds. And a study showed from one of the vendors that we work with, when you use their very high intensity red light, they had a large number of people go through with dermatologists looking at their skin. And they went for 40-minute sessions, 10 sessions. So they laid on looks like a tanning bed, but it's red lights. And 100% of people had a reduction of fine lines in their skin. So their skin all got healthier. But here's the kicker. saying, all right, maybe this is fake or whatever. So they waited 3 months with no additional treatments, and they had the dermatologist look at the people again. And they found that somewhere around 8% of them they just maintained the wrinkle reduction. But the other, and it's around 8%, I'm a little off, but it's in that range. The other 90 or 92% of people, they had a further reduction in wrinkles. In other words, the light exposure turned on healing and collagen thickening that stayed on for 3 months after they were exposed to the light. That's how important light is for the thickness and quality of your skin. And I just got to say, if you're listening to this and you have brown skin, it's even more important. And most people I know who have darker colored skin, huge advantage. You don't age as much. Like literally, like it's very hard to tell your age. So you already have an advantage from all the melanin in the skin, but it means that the light exposure for your skin is even more important for hormonal regulation, right? So it's a double-edged sword there. And I look where I am, like my skin is wired to look old sooner because it's paler, right? And then I've got to make sure I get the right amount of sun, but not too much sun. So it's very individualized. And I'll just tell you, red, infrared, and amber, they do magic things to your skin.
Wow. So awesome, man. So it's true. Black don't crack. That's amazing.
That's what all my friends tell me.
Dave, this has been so awesome. And you know what's so powerful is as I was reading through your story, I saw so many different things that really just spoke to myself, you know, like on a deeper level, because I know what it takes to experiment. I know what it takes to, you know, be a pioneer and to push the boundaries. And you've done that like few people ever have.
Thank you.
And it's just a really, really powerful thing to see, man. So thank you for putting in that work.
I appreciate you seeing it.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here to up-level your health today.
Like, what is this strange disease of cancer, right? It's completely different than any other disease that we encounter, and yet it's the #2 killer of Americans. So, like, if you look at heart attacks, for example, like we know what causes heart attacks. You get a clot in an